Stars
Podcast. This is the
Let me talk to you. This is such good shit.
Getting down to the end here. Welcome everybody to the Five Starr Wrestling Report podcast. Monday and Friday editions here on YouTube and Rumble. You can always check the link in the description box below to get the link over to the Rumble page. As per usual for the Monday show, we have AEW Rampage and NWA Power to report on, and a very special, I guess you would say, latter half of the podcast this week, where we run down my match of the year list for the year 2021, and we also do a deep dive on AEW's roster. And knowing the way I work, that is probably going to be the bulk of the show, and it's probably better that way, because suffice it to say, these two episodes of Rampage and NWA PowerrrSurge were not particularly noteworthy shows. So I'm going to give you pretty much a very swift rundown of both shows, and then we will move on with sort of the bulk and the meat of the matter for today's podcast edition. And as always, make sure you guys subscribe, comment, and like the show for me down below. Anyway, on to the Christmas Rampage show. And boy, what a Merry Christmas this was. We begin the show with Excalibur saying the following statement. "It's Saturday, you know what that means." Can these people literally not think of anything more creative to start their programming every week? Is everything so cut and dry with these people, they can't even spice up the intro for a holiday edition of their weekly show? Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everyone as we bring you this very special edition of AEW Rampage from the Greensboro Coliseum. Is it really that hard? Well, I will go ahead and get it out of the way early. Aside from the main event, there really wasn't a whole lot of note-taking I did for the show, which I kind of expected going in. I think most people figured viewership was going to be substantially down for this one, so I pretty much knew going in not a whole lot was going to matter. But I do want to get to that ever-so-legendary main event, so let us knock all the other crap out of the way first so we can get to the meat of the show. The editing and production on the show was horrible, by the way. Just thought I'd point that out. Our opening match is Jungle Boy versus Isaiah Cassidy with basically the entire fucking roster at ringside. And no, this was not a lumberjack match. It just accounts for the giant schmoz of bodies that are part of this Matt Hardy faction that for some reason still exists. So basically the story they attempted to tell early on was that Jungle Boy went in taped up due to, and this is a quote from Excalibur here, overtraining. So of course, what does Jungle Boy do? Well, he does every flip dive in the book and completely demeans the implication of said body tape. Because God forbid we actually sell. And as for the action that took place in the match, take any pro wrestling video game you've ever played, that was this match. Maybe with slightly better ring psychology, although that's really pushing it. I actually spent most of the match having to constantly remind myself that Isaiah Cassidy is not, in fact, a member of Top Flight or The Acclaimed. Again, just to show how generic and interchangeable much of this roster is. I also had to write this down because I thought this was hilarious. There's a part during the match where all the lumberjacks get into a brawl toward the end. Why? Because it's AEW, just roll with it. But the big spot at the end was Lucha Soros giving a chokeslam to what I originally wrote down in my notes here as a random man. Turns out this man does in fact have a name, and he happens to also be a member of Matt Hardy's clusterfuck faction that nobody could possibly care about. But what happens is Luchasaurus chokeslams this man, and Excalibur just casually goes, "Oh my, Luchasaurus just chokeslammed Joel." To which I immediately responded with the following statement: "Who the fuck?" The best part of this match was Ricky Starks doing a bunch of bad Christmas puns. It just... Again, there's so many comedic elements to AEW. It's like, of course Luchasaurus chokeslammed Joel. Everybody knows who Joel is. He's only been on the show, like, once. Fucking morons. Miro's still in purgatory. Just thought I'd fill you in with that. We had Hook in a quick squash against one of the Bear Country members, with Tony Nese doing pretty much the only thing of substance he's ever done since his AEW debut, blankly watching from ringside. And had you not already known going in that Hook was Taz's son, you'd have probably thought that Hook was Taz's favorite wrestler of all time. I mean, there is something oddly comedic in seeing Hook manhandle a guy that probably outweighs him by a good 50 to 60 pounds. If I gave a shit about Bear Bronson or had any lingering hope that he'll actually matter in the next 5 to 10 years, I'd probably be pissed about that. I know a lot of people were optimistic about the Hook debut and thought it was great. I thought it was fine. He's got a unique look and all, but I don't know. I kind of liked Hook's original gimmick of where he just literally stood in the background and looked pissed off all the time. Like I said, he's definitely different, and maybe if he was like 3 to 4 inches taller and 40 to 50 pounds heavier, I would kind of be all in on Mr. Hook. I guess we'll see what they do with him in the future. Hopefully it doesn't involve no-selling pile drivers. Again, normally I'd bitch about that, but it's AEW. It honestly doesn't surprise me. Then we cut to the ring, and at first glance, I had thought that Chris Statlander was literally standing across the ring from a chick that jumped the guardrail. Turns out it was Layla Hirsch, who we've seen on television maybe 3 or 4 times all year. She's maybe 5 feet tall, if that. She's very green, but I definitely think there's something there. She's got a decent look. She's intense. I'd say give it a few years and she might be a pretty good commodity to the women's division. I mean, the height thing is going to always be noticeable, and the way AEW films their matches doesn't necessarily do her a service, but I mean, I was a big fan of Casey Catanzaro in NXT, and I mean, she was probably the same height as Layla. Of course, Casey's also substantially thinner too, so maybe that's why the height thing sticks out so much with Layla. Also got a nice reminder during this match that Kyle O'Reilly's debut is going to be happening in a 6-man against 2 of the lowest rent wrestlers AEW has on their roster, in Chuck Taylor and Orange Cassidy. Fuck you, AEW. And I did catch a brief glimpse of the finish, and that was pretty cool. Statlander basically had Layla hooked upside down in some kind of inverted double underhook thing. Looked impressive, which kind of seems to be the story of Chris Statlander in AEW. She can do a lot of impressive stuff, but most of it just kind of sporadically occurs without any ebb or flow. It's very PWG-esque, just spot to spot to spot with very little to no coherency. And if she ditched the best friends and the whole alien gimmick, I'd probably be able to take her more seriously. But then, ladies and gentlemen, we get our main event. The only thing that mattered on this special Christmas edition of AEW to send the fans home happy as we head into the new year. For the TNT Championship, it's Sammy Guevara defending against the man, the myth, the legend, the greatest working troll babyface in the business today, Cody Rhodes. And to the shock of pretty much no one that's been paying even half attention to anything involving Cody on this program in the last basically 3 months. I mean, whenever he beat Malachi Black, I think that's when things really became noticeable on TV. Cody got savagely booed. And considering this was a tape show, you would probably figure they'd at least attempt to try and drown out the boos with some canned artificial cheers here and there. If, in fact, that's what they wanted and this isn't part of some grander story. And I forget who I was listening to when they said this, but I think it's a pretty accurate take on pretty much any match involving Cody Rhodes at this point. He's a guy that likes to implement ideas and angles from previous generations, but he has absolutely no concept of how to conceptualize paying off those ideas in the context of his matches. It's like, I don't know, it's not even on par with what some of the greener guys do in their matches, where everything's just really spot-oriented and laid out like a video game. Because, say what you want about him, but Cody can actually wrestle. Now, he's not fucking Ric Flair or anything like that, although I'm sure he likes to think he is. But the guy's technically competent, and he can do the basics, he can do the holds, he can work a more methodical, territorial style match without having to modernize everything to such a high degree. Problem, though, is that Cody has it envisioned in his mind that he has to do all the flashy shit because, well, he's a fucking TV star now. People don't want boring chain wrestling. They want angles. They want spots. They want memorable moments. Hence, we see Cody doing stupid shit like putting himself through flaming tables and scarring his body up to the nth degree, and the people still don't give a fuck about him. I will note this because the match itself wasn't the thing that actually pissed me off about this segment. The greatest crime of this entire match was them not putting David Crockett on commentary. Of all the fucking times these numbskulls would have had a valid case to break out the three-man commentary booth, they got David Crockett in-house, and what do they do with him? They have him sit ringside like a dweeb to present the belt to the winner of the match. Fools. And Sammy Guevara, to me, and I think I've been over this before, but he's very hit and miss on this show. Dude's got a lot of personality. He's very athletically gifted. He can do a lot of impressive stuff, but so much of what he does falls into that same camp I always talk about with AEW, where it's very spot-based and never feels organic or natural. In fact, the best match I've seen out of Sammy is that match he had with Jay Lethal for the TNT title a few weeks ago, and I mean, most of that was due to Lethal trying to keep things more basic. My biggest criticism of Sammy, though, still holds true. Dude's got to work on his selling. He does that thing that's so common amongst younger guys in the business where they'll sell a limb or a body part for a while, but then when it's their turn to gain the offensive control or make a comeback, they like immediately spring into a Superman and no-sell everything to the point where it just becomes ridiculous. And, point blank case, here's a spot that pretty much describes AEW stupidity in a nutshell. There's a part in this match where Sammy hits this fucking amazing double springboard 450 leap onto Cody on the outside. And within 20 seconds, literally, I shit you not, 20 seconds later, Sammy tries for the running leap off the steps, and Cody catches him, powerbombs him into the worst set of plants ringside I think I've ever seen. And I actually followed both guys for that spot there. Either Sammy should have done the move and sold on the outside, or Cody should have stayed down for a longer period while Sammy limped around the ring selling the arm and ribs. But, seeing Sammy hit that huge move and then getting laid out with a powerbomb less than a minute later, just stupid. But if you really want a lesson in the art of no-selling, and you want the full presentation on how to Super Cena your way into a title win that no one wanted to see, ladies and gentlemen, you can adopt from the playbook of Cody Rhodes at the end of this match. The finishing sequence, I shit you not, is the series of following moves, and I wrote this down verbatim. Cody goes to set Guevara on the top rope for a reverse superplex, but Guevara lands on his feet and bumbles and fumbles around with Cody for a minute to try and hoist him up on his shoulders for the reverse GTS he does. He connects with the move. Cody, of course, kicks out at 2.5. Guevara then goes up for a 630, but Cody gets the knees up, and immediately upon getting the knees up, Cody leaps to his feet, none the worse for wear, plants Guevara with the dreaded 3 crossroads of doom, which immediately killed the crowd because they knew what was coming. Cody hits the Tiger Driver 98 for the 3, wins the TNT title, much to the chagrin of the Greensboro fans, and AEW capped off the year 2021 by fucking the fans and giving them a title switch that no one wanted to see and gave everyone a glorious middle finger for a Christmas present. 'Twas fucking beautiful. I seriously wish I had a drop for lol Cody wins. Seriously, at this point, I'm half expecting Cody to just show up on the first Dynamite of 2022 wearing a fucking green t-shirt and a green ball cap that reads "Never Give Up." Just... yeah, fuck it, why not at this point? Just have Tony Khan buy the rights to Cena's WWE theme and just have Cody come out to Cena's music every week. And I'll concede, because I would be a hypocrite if I didn't say that I wanted AEW to do this title switch. I just didn't think AEW would actually have the balls to do it, but lo and behold, there you go. One of the AEW alleged 4 pillars getting stomped and crumbled to put over the future generation of talent. And pretty soon, if we get that long-awaited AEW World title switch over to Danielson on the January 5th show, that'll place AEW's 2 top champions as the 2 young lions on the roster, Bryan Danielson and Cody Rhodes. Got to get that young talent over, boy. God, at this point, all we need is the Beta Bucks to win back the tag straps, and... man, what do you put in the women's title picture? Yeah, you bring Charlotte Flair in, have her come in and squash Britt in 30 seconds. I think we'll be in perfect shape for 2022. Gotta say, man, trolling AEW and the fans, I do actually get some sick pleasure and enjoyment out of it. But of course, I love it because I'm a dick, but after watching this show, it's like, how can you not? Even the most loyal, diehard AEW fans have got to be shaking their heads after this show. I mean, unless you're a big mark for Hook, like, what the hell do you even take away from this year-end show, aside from the hilarity of Cody beating Sami clean for the TNT title? Like, they didn't even do something clever like have Cody use the ropes or use the tights to cheat. They just went full-blown fuck you, Sami, and swapped the title over. And keep in mind, just to refresh your memories here, because I know we like to constantly think that AEW has this mentality of genius booking where they do nothing wrong. Sammy Guevara is the same guy that handed Miro his first AEW loss. He did all of jack shit with the title aside from maybe a couple relatively uneventful TV defenses and one relatively good one. And believe me, I'm all for short title reigns. I'm not an advocate that every guy that holds a title needs to have like a 6-month reign or something like that where you just have them barrel through everybody. Like, especially if you aren't getting a return on the investment. But if they were going to have Guevara beat Miro, kind of would have figured they at least have something more lined up for Guevara during his title reign. But, again, who am I to judge the proclaimed Booker of the Year in his infinite wisdom and strategic long-term planning. He knows what he's doing. He's got everything planned out 6 to 12 to 18 months in advance. No problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, there's your Christmas edition of Rampage. Another pointless hour of AEW programming with a solid main event and a phenomenally inconsequential yet still hilarious title switch that no one wanted. Great job, guys. What an apropos way to end your final show of the year. People booing out of the building. Here's to an even better 2022. And we'll just go ahead and, for the sake of time, toss this episode of PowerrrSurge into the memory hole for eternity. Aside from the sheer comedy of Joe Galley pretending to be drunk and some of the interaction between Velvet Sky and Austin Idol, this was a glorified shotgun Saturday night episode where nothing of great significance happened. And, I mean, I'll be frank, even the squash matches they aired were really not worth discussing. Yeah, that about wraps up this NWA PowerrrSurge from December 23rd pretty well. Pointless. Honestly, I would have loved to actually see Jim Cornette's reaction of this, just to see how deep he buried this show into the grave. But again, it's much like the same thing I talked about with the Rampage show. I already kind of went in expecting a fuck-off episode, given it's the holiday week, so I'll spare you the details on this one and just hold off on NWA until we get a normal episode worth discussing. And I think with that said, that'll bring us to, well, the more interesting part of this special Monday edition of the Five Starr Wrestling Report. As I promised, I had a special setup for the last big Monday show for the year, and then I was going to dedicate the last portion of the podcast to discussing my top wrestling matches for the year of 2021, and that I was also going to do a deep dive on AEW's roster and kind of put together a list of keeps and get rid ofs that I could contrive. We'll do the AEW roster analysis at the end, but I do want to take some time here to run down my list of top wrestling matches for 2021. And this is going all the way back to January with this list here. So we're looking at a 12-month time frame and trying to comprise a list of top 20s. I should note, because I know I'm going to get taken to task for not mentioning particular matches, this is a list solely based on my preferences. I have not devised a list based on the Dave Meltzer 5-star tool system. I have not looked at any other lists of match of the years, although I'm sure many of these will end up on that list in some capacity, which means that I do in fact have something in common with modern wrestling fans to an extent. But this is my top wrestling matches of 2021, so I think we should get that out of the way first. There may be some matches on here that you probably forgot about the minute they were over, but for particular reasons and my preference of the kind of wrestling that I love, these are the matches that stuck out to me for the year, and these are the ones that kind of hit home with me. And I did my best to kind of narrow it down from like a least best to the best of the best, which you'll see as we go through the list here. You know, once we get down to like the last top 5 or so matches, you'll see some of the more standouts of the year come into play. But let's just run down this list here, and you know, feel free to share your comments. Let me know if any of these matches kind of made your list for top matches of the year, some of the more underrated matches. We'll just get going here. Coming in at number 20, I have LA Knight versus Cameron Grimes. This is from the NXT Takeover in Your House from June 13th, 2021. Of course, we've got to kickstart with by far one of my favorite NXT programs of the entire year, prior to the whole NXT 2.0 reboot debacle that we will not talk about. A perfect mid-card feud with the two perfect cast of characters with the perfect all-time legend at the helm of the program. And a feud that was unfortunately unceremoniously dropped shortly after the big blow-off, which sucked because I really enjoyed this program. Now granted, I have long past kept up to date with what NXT has done with the likes of Eli Drake or Cameron Grimes since I stopped watching. But when I go back and look at some of the breakout MVPs of NXT this past year, Cameron Grimes has to be at the top of that list. Grimes is one of those guys that 2 years ago when he first jumped aboard NXT, I really had no investment in. But when they started airing those vignettes of Grimes and the millionaire gimmick, and they paired him with those TV segments with Ted DiBiase, and the dude actually crafted some kind of personality, I was totally sold on him. Grimes was phenomenal on NXT this entire year, as well as Eli Drake for the short while that I actually got to watch him work. And this whole match being built around the $1 Million Championship, you had Ted DiBiase ringside for this one. This whole feud was just great. It was entertaining wrestling television. And on top of that, the reason that this match particularly stuck out to me is that this was by far one of the best modern ladder matches I have seen in professional wrestling. So many of these goddamn ladder matches these days are just these crash pad bump fest matches where guys are just taking all these dangerous falls and there's no coherence or logic to anything. This was the safest, most professional modern era ladder match I can recall in recent memory. And yeah, the match did see Grimes take a big ladder bump at the end, but they actually crafted the spot to occur at the end of the match instead of doing it like midway through where it just wouldn't have had any meaning or impact. I still remember most of the details about this match, and this happened back in June, I think I said? Yeah, June 13th. Just great stuff here. And like I said, that Grimes DiBiase pairing, although I was disappointed they just kind of cut it off abruptly with literally the worst send-off you could possibly imagine, this was one of the highlights of NXT this year by far. Coming in at number 19, I have Tomohiro Ishii versus Zack Sabre Jr. from the G1 Climax. And this is the match that took place on Night 9 on October 3rd, 2021. And if you had followed my G1 coverage this past fall, you probably found out that I wasn't a big fan of this year's G1 Climax tournament. And especially when you factor in the tragic and horrible way it ended with Kota Ibushi taking that awful flip bump off the top rope and separating his shoulder in the finals with Okada. I said at the time, and I'll say it again here because it bears repeating, it was a very apropos way to include what was a rather lackluster G1 tournament. That said, there was one standout match in this entire thing that made it worthwhile, and that was this Ishii Sabre Jr. match in Nagoya. And as big a fan as I was of Jeff Cobb through the entirety of the tournament, the two megastars of this entire G1 were Ishii and Sabre. To this day, they are still two of my favorite New Japan wrestlers that I always enjoy watching every year. They have two very contrasting and entertaining ring styles, but watching these guys perform, it's just like a whole different level of skill that you just don't see many guys work here in the States. And unfortunately, we really didn't get to see Ishii shine to the degree that we're probably accustomed to seeing him in New Japan when he wrestled that TV match on AEW programming. Of course, it didn't help they put him in a comedy match with Orange Cassidy and the fucking Best Friends. But this was by far my favorite match of the entire tournament from start to finish. And I know all the Shingo Takagi fans will probably take me to task for not having voted his match with Ishii above this one. Whatever, I don't care. Again, it sucks the G1 really didn't hit home with me this year. Spoiler alert, this was the only G1 match that I actually put on my top 20 list, just solely based on the fact that aside from the Ishii Sabre Jr. match, I really didn't click with a lot of the other tournament matches this year. There were definitely some really good matches, but nothing I would have classified as like match of the year worthy or anything. And like I mentioned with the Ibushi match, it was well on its way to being a contender for a match of the year until that horrid injury. Number 18, you got Finn Balor versus Roderick Strong from the March 3rd edition of NXT. A match that probably a lot have little to no recollection ever happening. And, I mean, to be fair, this one dates all the way back to March, so I can understand if it doesn't stick in a lot of people's minds. Goddamn, was this a phenomenal TV match. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the first time I think I've seen a Finn Balor-Roderick Strong match. It's funny, too, because if you actually go back and watch this match in full, like the first 5 minutes before the commercial break, they literally did absolutely nothing of substance. And when they came back from break and they started working over body parts, I mean, these guys cranked the momentum of this match up tenfold. They had a freaking semi-main WrestleMania style match. And, well, as you'll see soon as we run down the list here, this is not the only Balor match that I threw on the top matches of the year. I know the whole Finn Balor NXT title reign feels like fucking centuries ago, given how quickly the scope of the brand has changed in the last 3 months, but God, Balor was such a great NXT champion. And I'll say this, man. Like, if Danielson is the MVP of 2021 from his tenure in AEW toward, like, the second half of the year, Finn Balor is MVP of 2021 from January up until whenever he dropped the strap to Karrion Kross and got called back up to the main roster. And for the record, I have no idea what they've been doing with him on the main roster, but I can tell you for sure, it damn sure probably isn't as good as the stuff Balor was doing for the first half of 2021. Or for that matter, pretty much anything he's done in NXT since he came back. Number 17, got Dustin Rhodes versus Bryan Danielson from the October 23rd edition of AEW Dynamite, which I actually had to go back and check my notes, but this was the Saturday edition of Dynamite when they moved the show over to the weekends temporarily for, oh God, what was it? Was it the World Series, I think? Yeah, it feels like forever ago. And probably another shocker of a match that some people probably weren't expecting, but when I go back and kind of recap that whole AEW Eliminator tournament from a couple months back, I mean, aside from the Danielson-Miro finals match, by far my favorite match of that series was Danielson and Dustin. Because you know what this match was? It was logical, smooth, old school professional wrestling. And of course, we're still talking about a point where Danielson was a babyface too. And Dustin was a babyface in this match too, which is something really difficult to pull off unless you have the two right wrestlers for that role doing a babyface versus babyface match. Just phenomenal stuff here. And, you know, two guys that know how to work. They know how to tell a compelling story without needlessly sacrificing their health and bodies with pointless dives and unprotected bumps on their heads and necks. And again, you know, like I noted at the beginning, I know some people will hate that I picked this match over the Danielson-Kingston match. And, you know, I'll admit, the Danielson-Kingston tournament match was very good, but sorry, I enjoyed the Dustin match more. Here's one I'll throw people for a loop. What's that? Tommy actually liked a fast-paced spot show TV match for a change? Well, if you're going to do the stunt show match, and again, you got to have two relatively decent workers you can have to pull it off. It's just the problem of modern wrestling now, where the guys that do these stunt show kinds of matches only know that style. So, of course, they don't know how to tell logical stories and make sense of all the shit they do. Hence, everything feels random and ill timed. But that was not Pac versus Andrade. And I actually enjoyed both of their TV matches. Although I vaguely recall the first one ending in some kind of bullshit interference with Andrade's posse running in at the end. Wasn't that the match where Andrade turned on Chavo? Still never heard any update on that guy, by the way. Aside from the fact that apparently he's filming a movie or a TV series or something. But the second match that these guys had, and again, I wrote this down. This is from the October 22nd edition, so literally the day right before that Dustin Danielson match. But it was good. And above all else, it was the best match that I've seen out of Andrade since he showed up in AEW. And granted, I've been very critical of Andrade on the show for a long time. Some of it is his booking, which I know he can't take the full blame for. His promos are still fucking wretched, but the dude can do a lot of impressive stuff come bell time. And the stuff I watched Andrade do in this match with Pac is some of the best stuff I've ever seen Andrade do. That includes the stuff I saw him do in NXT. And, I don't need to put over how great Pac is again. That dude's a fucking workhorse machine. And I said it before, I'll say it again, no shame. If I owned a wrestling company, Pac is easily my number 1 or number 2 top heel in the main event picture. He's not the biggest guy height-wise, but he's got a fantastic look. He's built like a real athlete. He's got the best facials. His ring work is outstanding. His promo work is great. He's just got a real old school intensity to him that you just can't teach a lot of guys in the business anymore. And, I still won't discount the garbage follow-up they gave this program once they threw Malachi Black and Cody in there to screw things up. But the Pac Andrade program, it was a fine little TV series. And the 2 singles blow-offs on television, definitely thumbs up. Number 15, I got Finn Balor versus Adam Cole from the March 10th edition of NXT. And I know we're going back to the Finn Balor train momentarily. Actually, skimming through my notes here, for the next 3 matches. And the funny thing about this match with Cole for the NXT title is that this just happened the week after Balor's TV match with Roddy. Also back to when Adam Cole was booked as a top-level star and not, whatever in the fuck he's doing in AEW right now with the Beta Bucks. I actually kind of got mad going back and watching this match a few days ago, just because it made me realize how much they dropped the ball with Cole in AEW since he showed up. But looking past that, I love this title match. And it was a very different kind of match than the one Balor had with Roddy the week prior. The one with Roddy was more technically sound. This one, I think it played more into Adam Cole's style. And it's a style that works better for him in terms of how his matches are driven. It's story-based more heavily, more ground-based, more near falls and the big flashy spots, which is kind of Cole's thing. And, when used in moderation and under the right circumstances, those kinds of matches are perfectly acceptable. It's just you got to monitor when you do it, not go overboard with it like every other company does. But the real story of this match actually centered around the big angle at the end with Kyle O'Reilly showing up and spoofing the hell out of Cole. Y'all remember the angle they did on television beforehand where Cole dropped O'Reilly on the steps with a brainbuster and put him on the shelf for a while. And this was the show where O'Reilly made his big return and sporting the debut jacket and the spiked hair and whatever he tried to pass off with that whole cool Kyle gimmick that really didn't work, if I'm being frank. And, of course, we all remember that ultimately sprung the Cole O'Reilly Trio series, which I was left feeling underwhelmed with it when it was all said and done. And, spoiler alert, but yeah, the Cole O'Reilly matches did not make the cut for this top match series for me. seen plenty of great Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly matches before, and unfortunately, I don't think any of them ever fell under the WWE umbrella. Number 14, I got Finn Balor versus Pete Dunne from NXT Takeover Vengeance Day. That would have been the February 14th edition. And speaking of a match of varying styles, the Balor-Pete Dunne match, very different from the Cole and Roddy matches. It was a great European-style technical match. Probably one of the reasons I love watching Finn Balor matches so much is just going back and seeing how versatile the guy is. And he knows all the different ring styles. He knows how to moderate things to fit with the guys he's being paired with. I mean, and of course, the dude's been around the globe wrestling for so long now in places like Japan and Europe and the States. He's had plenty of experience working those various ring styles, which he just kind of goes to show it's all muscle memory. It's like, oh, I'm working Pete Dunne now? Cool. Let's go for a modern mat-based European technical style. And I'll be honest, kind of soured on Pete Dunne in the last couple years. I really enjoyed his work with Tyler Bate and a lot of the stuff he did in NXT UK. I love the whole Broserweights thing with Matt Riddle. Yeah, it was goofy, especially with all the awkward promos and angles they used to run with those two, but goddamn, those tag matches were great. And, I even dug the main event singles push they were given Dunne at the beginning of the year. I kind of figured a lot of people always knew they never had a plan to put the strap on Dunne, but, I think it was just a necessary thing to do to spice up the main event picture a little bit. And, obviously you didn't get a chance to watch, or if you didn't get a chance to watch the match, highly recommend go back and watch it. It's easily the best Pete Dunne singles match I think I've seen since probably going back to the match he had with Tyler Bate in whatever year that was. Going way back in the time machine. Was that probably like 2017, 2018, something like that? And obviously, again, I have no idea what they're doing with Pete Dunne right now on NXT. If he even is stationed there at this point. Well, wouldn't be surprised with the direction they've gone if he hasn't gone back over to the UK. Probably a better fit for him anyway. And number 13, riding that Finn Balor gravy train. I could not leave off the Balor-O'Reilly match from the January 6th show. That was the NXT New Year's Evil edition. A very, very early match of year contender right out of the gate. And I even remember jotting this down in my notes. I think this is like the very first match I wrote down. Like, yeah, this is probably going to be on the list by the end of the year. And there's definitely a level of competition that ran up against it, especially in the latter half of the year. But God, was this fantastic. And I've seen plenty of great Kyle O'Reilly singles matches in my time, but nothing like what I saw in this match with Balor. Those matches he had with Cole and Ring of Honor in Japan. I mean, those were some great defining O'Reilly singles matches, but this main event title match he had with Balor on this show, it was like, I remember thinking to myself afterwards, it was the first time that I really saw main event level Kyle O'Reilly. It was actually a scenario going where, I remember thinking before the show, I was not fully convinced that they weren't going to put the strap on O'Reilly. And I think at the time, I still kind of figured the end goal was to do O'Reilly and Cole. And whether or not that was going to be for the NXT title, there was the high probability that they could have easily stuck that championship in there and it would have made sense. Of course, they ended up just going with those two in a regular singles match, as we found out. But this is a real breakout performance for Kyle. This is the first time in his entire WWE run where I saw more than just, Red Dragon tag champion mid-card level Kyle O'Reilly. I really did see a world champion performance caliber, and he stuck the landing perfectly. And again, could they have put the strap on him? Sure. Would it have worked? I think given the traction he was starting to gain, once they fully split from the Undisputed Era and started, going in the babyface direction to spotlight O'Reilly. I think they could have had something there. Yeah, the end goal I think was always to still get the strap on Cross because, if you all remember, this is still coming off that injury that he was sidelined with the previous year, right after he had first won the belt. So, hindsight's 2020, but I mean, this match still stands up in December 2021, just like it did 12 months ago when I first saw it. And, well, now we can only hope that they don't screw up O'Reilly and AEW like they already have done with Adam Cole. Number 12, Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan from the April 30th edition of SmackDown. This is a funny one because I had not actually watched this match until I saw it on a recommended list on one of those Reddit subforums. I may have passingly mentioned this before, but I have not watched main roster WWE television in well over 3 years right now, Raw or SmackDown. But when the reports started coming out that Danielson had decided to leave WWE and he wasn't going to re-sign, and that this was his final match in the company, I had to watch it just to see how they went about booking Danielson's big send-off. I mean, knowing the way WWE works, I was expecting a full-fledged massacre followed by the obligatory heat angle at the end where he's laid out for dead. And I was right about the second part, but this match was far from a one-sided beatdown. And, obviously Roman Reigns has been the highlight of anything main roster related since he came back as a heel late last year and they put the strap on him. And already having watched that three-way for Mania with Reigns, Danielson, and Edge, I probably figured this match was going to be pretty good. I had no idea this would have wound up being as outstanding as it ended up being. And of course, Danielson's in it, so I probably should have known better going in. It was a long match, too. This thing almost go like a full 30 minutes before it was over. I guess if you count commercial breaks, too. But it had a lot of similar elements as the Hangman Page Danielson title match from Dynamite. It was long, but it didn't feel long. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't constantly fixated on watching the clock, wondering how much time we had left in the match before it was over. But I'm very much glad I chose to go out of my way to watch this match in full because I'm usually skeptical of most people's opinions to wrestling matches, like especially when it comes to modern fans and their low levels of expectation. But they didn't miss the mark on this one. This is a great title match and a great send-off for Danielson. And I know there were a lot of emotions stemming from Bryan going into that match, given how much he loved working for Vince and the WWE. This is one of those circumstances where Bryan knew he was gone after the match, and he was absolutely professional with the way he handled everything. Clean job, no bullshit, no going out of his way to overprotect himself when it's not needed. Just, hey, Roman, this is the end of the road for me. Let's go out there and tear the house down and make some magic. A beautifully, beautifully constructed main event title TV match that I highly recommend anyone check out that has not yet seen it. Even if you are a die-hard WWE hater and don't want to give this company your time of day, believe me, I'm right there with you, bro. Very harsh on the sheer suctitude that is anything WWE main roster programming, and I've been that way for well over 10 years now, but trust me when I tell you, sometimes they throw you a nugget and find a way to pull you back in. It is worth going out of your way to watch that match. And, I guess I'll throw this out there real briefly since we're on the subject of Roman and SmackDown. I have actually been following some of the clips of the build to the Roman-Brock Lesnar match for that Day 1 show. I think I'm going to watch it. Like I said, apparently it's been built up really nicely on television, and there is a genuine bit of uncertainty as to whether or not Roman will actually walk out as the champion after that show. So I want to give it a go and see how they go about booking that. And by this point, I'm pretty much aware of the Paul Heyman split. So there's a lot going into that match, which you kind of wonder why they're necessarily blowing that off before Mania, but I guess we'll see what they do. And we'll see if it stacks up as a potential early match of the year contender for 2022. Because, like I said, I've been watching some of those YouTube clips of Brock Lesnar. That dude's been fucking fire. He is, I don't know, he is like a whole other worldly Brock Lesnar right now. So, I'll keep that one in my back pocket for the time being, but don't be surprised if you see me recap that Lesnar Reigns match. Here's one that I have kind of been going back and forth on for about a month now, and been trying to really decipher whether or not I wanted to include it on my top 20 list. When I first recapped this match on the FSWR podcast, I think I had praised the match to an extent, but that I really didn't see it as anything more than just like a solid pay-per-view opener. This is a match that I actually went back to watch a second time just to see if maybe a second go-around would persuade me differently than a first-time viewing experience. I still would probably not have put it on my top 10. And I know there are a lot of people that eulogized this match as like one of the best pay-per-view openers in wrestling history. I've seen Brett versus Owen at WrestleMania 10. I've seen Eddie and Ray in the opener from WrestleMania 21. MJF and Darby was good. It was very good. I still wouldn't say it's an all-time classic. But, that said, worthy of an acclaim as a match of the year? Upon second viewing, I think so. Easily, it's the best Darby singles match I think I've ever seen. It's, I don't know, it had a lot of old school Mid-South elements to it. But it still felt modernized. You know, they had a nice heat angle at the end to put MJF over, but they kept Darby protected and taking the fall. It had a story going in that they actually paid off with MJF getting the win via headlock takeover. But again, it was professional wrestling. It wasn't a crash dummy spot show opener where they just went out there and did a bunch of meaningless dog shit for 20 plus minutes. They told a story, they paced things well throughout the match, they built to a climax, and they paid it off in the end. And like I said, I'm a very skeptical Darby Allin viewer. You know, he's pretty much ran the gamut from anything from good as this to just very outlaw PWG garbage. So maybe that's why upon a first viewing experience I was kind of looking at it narrow-mindedly. But going back in the time machine, yeah, I kind of wish I would have given the match more acclamation than I did from the onset. Like I said, I still wouldn't say this is like the best pay-per-view opener of all time, but certainly it deserves a spot in match of the year. Oh man, Tommy's a misogynist. He hates women's wrestling. He thinks women shouldn't be in wrestling. Well, here you go. 2 biological females, allegedly, on a top match of the year list. But, yeah, joking aside, you know what? When I went back and took a look at the WrestleMania card from this year, both nights, in fact, aside from the 3-way Universal title match, and more on that later, this match was pretty much the only other match I genuinely enjoyed. It was certainly the best match on night 1, that's for damn sure. And I think I've talked about this before, but, you know, in case I haven't, I will bring it up again. I have been a huge advocate of Bianca Belair for pretty much since the first time I ever saw her show up on NXT. I knew from pretty much the onset that she was going to be a big star. And, you know, when the time came for WWE to look for some new top-level female talent to replace some of that old guard on the main roster, I always kind of figured Bianca would have been a perfect candidate for that slot. She's athletically talented. She's got a phenomenal main event look. Her promos are excellent. Her ring presence is outstanding. And like I said, man, she She just screams big star. And she always screamed that to me right from the moment I saw her. She has that main event charisma that, again, you can't teach to a lot of people in the business today. And admittedly so, I think I've talked about this before too. I've never been the biggest Sasha Banks fan in the world. At one point, I would have probably labeled her as my least favorite of the four horsewomen. Although Charlotte Flair's definitely given her a run for her money in recent years. But I went back and watched this match again just to relive the experience, and it was just as great a second time around as it was the first time when I saw it in April. It was a great defining moment for Bianca's career. Having her win the Women's Rumble match and paying it off with her winning the strap in the main event against a top-level female talent. Can't get much more of an endorsement than that. Just kind of sucks that WWE since dropped the ball with her, and now the focus is back around the same women the focus has been on since 2015, 2016? And if you want more detail on that, just go check out my Chair Shot article on the Four Horsewomen and why they desperately need replaced going into 2022. Number 9, I have Bryan Danielson versus Miro from Full Gear. Kind of alluded to it a while ago, but I definitely had to throw it on here considering that I think I even remember saying that this was my favorite wrestling match on that pay-per-view last month. For me, though, this was really the deciding factor that sold me on Miro. I have been over his initial run a couple times before. I hated the whole Kip Sabian best man story. The whole way they debuted him on that show with that goofy pink Mickey Mouse shirt and the whole video game thing. It was tacky. It was dumb. It was a complete mismanagement of a guy that, let's be frank, solely got over in WWE based on the fact that he was a powerhouse ass-kicking machine. And once he finally found his footing with the whole Redeemer gimmick, the only thing he really needed was a big match to solidify it. And of course, if y'all remember, the Danielson-Miro match wasn't intended to initially happen. I think y'all remember John Moxley before he left. They had originally slotted him for that finals match against Danielson at the pay-per-view. And I even remember saying, I wasn't completely sold on the idea of Moxley and Danielson, but putting a guy like Miro in a position like that as a replacement, it was probably the best option they had. And Miroson and Danielson was by far the best overall professional wrestling match on that show by a long shot. Of course, some people were immediately thinking, wait a minute, what about the main event? Patience, children. We're getting there. The other thing, too, I remember loving about this match going in is that if you remember the show I did prior to the pay-per-view recap where I kind of did a preview predictions discussion, I was not completely sold that Danielson was winning this match. Especially when you factor in most people were presuming Paige was winning the world title in the main event. Kind of made booking sense at that point to figure Miro would go over and be Paige's first title program. Because I think I remember, too, that was shortly after Miro dropped the TNT title. So, of course we saw the direction they ended up going, which was a completely unexpected swerve with the Bryan heel turn. But, yeah, going into that original Miro match, there was the part of me in the back of my head that was thinking there is a slim possibility that Miro hands Danielson his first AEW loss. And boy, what an accolade that would have been for a guy like Miro. Now, granted, yeah, they kind of dropped the ball with Miro since, and I think the last time we saw him, he was in purgatory arguing with God or something like that. But prior to that, the whole period of TNT champion Miro and the match he had with Danielson at the Full Gear pay-per-view, that was peak Miro in AEW. The only thing I can hope for is that they don't fully fuck him up in 2022. Number 8. We got Walter versus Tommaso Ciampa from NXT Takeover Stand and Deliver. That would have been the April 7th date. I remember people talking about this match probably ending up being NXT's best match of the year. Of course, I had no idea what was to come with Walter later in the year. But yeah, at the time, this Walter Ciampa match was definitely something that was going to be tough to top. And, I know I talked about Pac earlier being like my top one or top two heel if I ever owned a wrestling company, but by far, if I did legitimately own a wrestling promotion, my top long-term heel champion would easily be Walter. Anytime this guy's on a big stage, he delivers, and he delivers in spades. Be it the match with Tyler Bate from a couple years ago, the first match he had with Ilya Dragunov last year, and even up to this match he had with Ciampa. He is the quintessential Mid-South UWF old school big guy heel. His style, like he's one of those guys that you could have easily plugged into the early to mid 80s. His style would fit just as well as it does in 2021. There's just something about the way Walter works. So like, you can take what he does, implement it in any different era of the business, he would still stack up as a top performer. And of course, I don't need to put over how incredible Ciampa is. I forget who mentioned this, but someone had talked about the fact that like Ciampa is one of those guys that, even though he's a shorter guy, he's not the beefiest guy in the world, but man, does he have the look. Great physique, great intensity, like a presence and vocal intonation that just stands out from every other guy that cuts promos in the business today. Like you could blindfold most wrestling fans, tell them to pinpoint a Ciampa promo based on just audibly listening to him, guaranteed they would nail it 99% of the time. That deeper, grungier voice with that distinct tone, like it's just so unlike the delivery of so many other guys that do promos in the business today. And it's just a prime example of a pay-per-view caliber match where it builds and builds and builds throughout. Both guys just keep dishing out more and more offense, and essentially the entire story of the match is that Ciampa gives Walter literally everything he has in his arsenal, but just isn't enough to take the big guy down. And I even remember the finish here because it was so basic and fundamental. It just, I don't know, it was funny. But it was also believable. Literally the finish of the match is Walter throwing Ciampa into the ropes, and when he's sprung back at him, he just gives him this giant palm slap to the chest, and he cuts him off and pins him. Just straight up. A simple strike to the chest. Beautiful, beautiful match. Number 7, CM Punk versus Eddie Kingston from AEW Full Gear. You know what this Punk Kingston match was? Aside from one of the best built programs AEW's done all year, especially when you factor in that promo exchange those guys had, this was a classic example of just because you could hypothetically go 15 to 20 minutes does not mean you need to. And I remember even sitting there saying to myself after the show was over, like, this match is going to stack up at the end of the year solely based on the fact that it was the shortest match in the Full Gear pay-per-view, but it was also one of the most effective matches on the Full Gear pay-per-view. I think the entire thing lasted 10 minutes? Maybe 10 and a half? But they packed everything that they needed to into that 10-minute window, and God, was it perfectly executed. They just had a standard slugfest brawl, and that's exactly what it was billed as going in. The whole visual of Punk bleeding with that great camera work there. Both guys selling exhaustion and fatigue toward the tail end. By far, it's both guys' best match in their AEW tenure. And it took me a long time to come around to Eddie Kingston in AEW, but that might just be the genius of CM Punk, but prior to that whole Punk program, I really wasn't digging much of what they were doing with him in AEW. I hated the John Moxley pairing. For the longest time, it kind of just felt like he was toiling directionless. It really wasn't until he had that promo exchange with Punk on TV where I finally realized, so this is the loudmouth Eddie Kingston that everyone boasts about. Glad I finally got to see it. God, this is a great match. And again, the only thing I really have to complain about it is just the aftermath and the way they handled it. a feud that I really wish would have lasted longer instead of doing like the whole one and done thing. And I mean, honestly, I was kind of afraid they were going that direction to begin with. I thought there was more mileage to gain out of this feud. I thought Eddie and Punk are talented enough where they could have easily carried this feud into 2022 and kept it interesting. And it's not to say that I haven't enjoyed the stuff with MJF and Punk, because that stuff's been great. But, you know, when you look at how they followed up with Kingston, and now he's doing multi-man matches on TV, feuding with 2.0 and Daniel Garcia, it's just, it screams to me zero vision. The exact same case you can make about Miro. It's like, you build the guy up, you put him in a key spot, he does the job, and it's like, okay, now what? And that's exactly what it feels like with Kingston now. It's like he had all that momentum riding into Full Gear, and he lost to Punk, still had a great performance, and it was definitely a breakout match for him, but it's like the whole follow-up with it. It's like, why even bother? And again, you could say that with so many guys in AEW. Just that constant stop and start pushing that they do with guys just does not make any sense to me. Kind of touched on this one with the Bianca Sasha match, but I mean, I think it's universally agreed on by this point that the Daniel Bryan Edge Roman Reigns match was the best match out of both nights on the WrestleMania card. And I'll admit, going in, I was vaguely, and I mean minusculely, following the build up to it. The video package prior kind of gave me a brief insight of how things had developed. I still remember being partially confused as to how Edge went in as the heel. That didn't make a whole lot of sense to me at the time, and considering that I think he's a babyface on TV now, it just kind of seemed like just a superfluous booking quirk that wasn't needed. Not to say that Edge isn't a phenomenal heel, and I mean, goddamn was he great in this match. And I've always preferred heel Edge over babyface Edge. And I'll throw this out there too, because, you know, I've been on record talking about my criticism of multi-man matches in professional wrestling. Say what you want about WWE, man. They got plenty of problems that we are well aware of, but one thing that you really can't take away from them when it comes to matches in terms of layout and structure, not always, because there have been a few clunkers throughout history, but a lot of the time, they do know how to do 3-ways and 4-ways effectively. Of course, you have to have the right set of guys to do it with, but you know, when I look back at some of the more recent best 3-ways in WWE, you look back at the Benoit HBK Hunter match from 20, the Batista Orton Danielson match from WrestleMania 30. You know, I'll even throw this one out there too. I love this match. You know, even though it didn't happen to WrestleMania, but I still remember it from back in the day. That Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Seth Rollins 3-way from the, oh man, was it the 2015 or the 2016 Rumble? It had to have been the 2015. Yeah, because Seth was still Money in the Bank at that point. Yeah, and that's right. They were building up to Lesnar and Roman at Mania that year, because that was the Royal Rumble where Reigns won and got booed out of the building because they sent The Rock out to endorse him, and the people still hissed and pissed him out of the building. But oh god, yeah, that Lesnar Cena Rollins match, that was one of my favorite triple threats of all time. And the Reigns Edge Bryan 3-way this past year, it stacks up among the matches I just mentioned. You know, the whole ending with Edge giving Danielson the concerto and Reigns bouncing back and doing the concerto to Edge, stacking him and Bryan on top of each other like plywood to do the double pin. Great finish. And of course, this kept Reigns' title reign going, which I think some people may have even seen as a shock at that point. You know, especially with Edge winning the Rumble match. I think most people figured he was slated to win the belt here and get one last hoorah to, you know, carry the strap through the rest of the year, or maybe just in the short term. But yeah, they didn't go that way. But great 3-way main event, great closure to night 2 of Mania. And, you know, of course, having the fans back for the show was another big highlight of that match. And as we get down to the nitty gritty here, number 5, got Kenny Omega versus Hangman Adam Page from Full Gear. And I'll note this again, because I want to stay consistent with this. The Miro Danielson match, on record, I would say it's still probably my favorite wrestling match from Full Gear, without a doubt. But I am also willing to recognize that sometimes when it comes to professional wrestling, the bigger picture is what matters. And I will concede, I really hated a lot of the build-up to this Page road to redemption. The drunken cowboy stuff I thought was retarded. The whole affiliation with the job order was horrible. Just Bush League low-rent garbage television. The whole woe's me presentation of Adam Page, just awful. However, from the time that Page returned on television and won that casino ladder match and got the big initial babyface pop for his return, and they ditched the whole beer drinking thing and just primarily spent weeks giving me the badass determined Hangman Page, that stuff was great. And, it's partially why I still really wouldn't consider the Omega Page program like the best booked story of 2021 for AEW. Given the fact that I hated the majority of the actual story they had to run with initially. But when I remove all that, when I just focus solely on what mattered going into the match, there was really only one outcome and one result that mattered. That was Hangman Page becoming world champion. And I know I kind of ran down the gauntlet of potential outcomes they could have run with, especially if they didn't want to go all in with Page winning the strap. And I mean, considering it was coming off the heels of the Omega Danielson match a month prior, there was a case to be made at the time that Omega could have easily retained the title here to set up that rematch with him and Danielson. Yeah, but you think more about it in hindsight now, especially with where Kenny Omega was with his health at this point, really beaten up and needed some time off for surgery and healing. Page winning was kind of a given at that point. This was not my favorite AEW title match I've seen. This was definitely not my favorite Hangman Page or Kenny Omega match I think I've seen. But again, I'm thinking overall bigger picture and what really mattered. We got the right result. The fans popped and went crazy for the title switch. And even if I didn't like a lot of the particulars of the story, it was capped off for a long-awaited payoff. Again, would I have booked it differently? Yeah, probably. But the end result was the right result. And you all know I am not a big fan of Kenny Omega, but I will never take it away from the fact that when he is capable of putting on very good to great wrestling matches, he can do that. When he's serious and he's not circle jerking with his posse of goofballs on TV, he can be very good. I hated the Kenny Omega heel world title run. I hated all the elite shenanigans. I hated all the stuff he was doing on television in the build up to this match, the whole Don Callis thing, all that stuff. It was just junk. It's horrid. But when it came down to this match, and I removed all the other garbage associated with the storyline, this was a great main event title match with a satisfying payoff. And again, the only reason I ranked this above the Miro Danielson match was solely based on the Page title win, because it was a bigger deal. It's one of those matches that I probably won't go out of my way to watch again. I honestly couldn't tell you a lot of the details of the match aside from the Page title win, but this is definitely an example of professional wrestling where match quality doesn't so much matter, and it's more so about the finish. Was the finish executed well? Yes. Did it garner the right reaction? Yes. So, personal biases aside, I will take it. Number 4, Nick Aldis versus Trevor Murdoch from NWA 73 from August 29th. And again, going back to the exact topic of suitable finishes, you can pretty much copy and paste most of what I said about the previous match and pin it here. Moreover, the reason I enjoyed all this Trevor title match, I know I constantly talk about this stuff, but again, it felt like an old school main event NWA World's Heavyweight title match in a modern context. It was a Ric Flair Harley Race main event style match where it was all centered around real wrestling and real storytelling. Guys working body limbs, grounding one another on the mat, building up a story throughout, the entire drama and centerpiece being around Trevor, not being on Aldis's level, but in the final moments of the match when it mattered the most, Trevor managed to outsmart Aldis and find a way to win. And I think if I remember going in, like Aldis was working the match as a heel. I remember in the video package, they had spent a lot of time basically playing up the idea that this was a long time coming. You know, they've shown footage of Trevor losing a couple of the big matches to Aldis for the belt via, well, pretty much all the traditional underhanded Ric Flair tactics in the book. Just screw job city left and right. And the selling point for this was all Trevor needs is one more shot to get the job done. And I think if I'm not mistaken, they billed this as a title versus career match too, right? Trevor lost, he'd have to retire for good. You know, and that's always a nice little wrinkle for these kinds of matches, just to really set the stakes high. But like I said, it was all about the payoff here. And when Trevor hit that top rope bulldog and the people went crazy for that title switch, that was all that mattered in the end. And both guys worked incredibly hard in this match. I love the attention to detail and trying to make this feel like a real, authentic NWA or Mid-South main event caliber match. I love the story of both guys trying to adopt from the Flair-Harley playbook with the way they worked and structured the match. It's easily the best NWA reboot match I think I've seen since they came back into the fold in 2019. I don't think anything they've done since this match has come close to that level, which is kind of disappointing. And, you know, while I wouldn't say Trevor's world title run thus far has lit the world ablaze, when I see Trevor walking around with that world's heavyweight title on NWA TV, again, it feels real. Doesn't look artificial, doesn't look forced. It's a grown-ass man riding a wave of momentum and being presented as a top-of-the-card talent. And as we get down to the last few matches here, I think you'll start to kind of see a little obvious pattern with the remainder of the matches. And again, I will throw it out for the record. Not a big Kenny Omega guy. Never have been, probably never will be. But the dude knows how to put on great matches when he wants to. And this 30-minute time limit draw he had with Danielson on the September 22nd edition of Dynamite was fucking fantastic. And of course, the match played more into Danielson's wheelhouse, which probably accounts for why I enjoyed it so much. But this was probably the best Kenny Omega match I've seen since whenever he wrestled Pac. And I know I kind of use it as a reference point, but I mean, it really is how long it's been since I've seen a quality Kenny Omega match on TV or pay-per-view. And the only thing that made this match so great with a guy like Omega is that for the first time in a long time, I actually saw Omega understand the importance of pacing in a wrestling match. So many of Kenny Omega's matches, it's just big spot, big spot, big spot from beginning to end. So much stuff never feels like it has any room to breathe. It's too much all the time. That is like my number one criticism of the guy to this day. In something that I would consider a constructive criticism instead of all the goofy comedy stuff that I always poke fun at. But just timing and pacing, it is something that when Omega nails it, he nails it. And when he doesn't, he doesn't. It's just the simplest way I can put it. But the great thing about booking a 30-minute Broadway between these guys is that it basically handcuffed Omega into working a slower, more methodical wrestling match for a change, and lo and behold, it turned out to be one of the best fucking Kenny Omega matches I've ever seen. For everything that people love to rave about, that Young Bucks, Hangman Page, and Kenny Omega tag match from whatever that show was early last year, that match was the polar opposite of this, and personal preference, but you could take that Bucks versus Page and Omega tag match and shove it. This is the kind of stuff that I want to see out of Kenny Omega in the future. It just sucks that it usually only ends up turning out few and far between. And of course, all thanks to Danielson for being able to pull that out of Omega and carrying him to such a great TV match. And I know that'll piss off a lot of Omega fans to hear me say that, but trust me, if you thought this match would have been half as way decent if Omega was carrying the action and laying it out, you're an idiot. If you gave Omega the book for this one, he would have done every fucking ludicrous dive spot in the first 5 minutes, and they would have totally lost the plot before the first commercial break. And speaking of our MVP of 2021, you obviously know I was going to throw this one in there. It may be recent, it may be last minute, but to me, it doesn't matter if this match would have happened as early as last week or as late as January or February of this year. It still would have held up as a match of the year by the end of 2021, guaranteed. And, I already spent a good chunk of the Dynamite Report this past week talking about the match in detail, so I'm not going to bore you with all that stuff now. But I will restate again that I still classify this as the best Hangman Page match I have seen from him in AEW. It's the best Bryan Danielson match I've seen from him in AEW too, but breakout performance for the Hanger here. And again, I will go on record. I will say it. Probably the best match AEW has ever done, period. Certainly it's the best professional wrestling match I've ever seen them do. Just goes to show how fucking great Danielson is right now. He goes 30-minute Broadway with Kenny Omega. Pfft, no problem, bro. I can go a full hour with Hangman Page. Dude's incredible, man. If you would have told me in 2016, after the first time Daniel retired, that by the year 2021, not only would he be working full-time again and doing matches, but that he'd be having the best goddamn professional wrestling matches in the entire business, I probably would have laughed in your face. But here we are, it's 2021, and not only is Bryan back working full-time in the ring, but he is in fact having the best matches of his entire career. And obviously I can't speak for Bryan firsthand, but if I had to venture a guess, I would say this dude's having the time of his life right now. He looks happier. He looks healthier, so much more rejuvenated as a talent and individual, just even in comparison to where he was a few years ago. Less I even bring up 2015 or 2016. And like I said, I know leaving WWE was really tough for him, and when I think about where a guy like Danielson is probably better off in the scope of things right now for his career, I criticize AEW for a lot of things, especially when it comes to booking talent. I really think Danielson's a better fit in AEW. It does have a lot of those Kurt Angle TNA elements to it, where it feels like he's just there to have the best matches of his career and be a fucking machine week in and week out. But in terms of character evolution, he really feels like a totally different personality from his presentation on WWE. He is a modern day Ring of Honor, mid to late 2000s American Dragon rendition of Bryan Danielson. God, has it been great. I'm telling you, man, embrace it while you can, because this man is going to be greatly missed when he eventually does retire for real. But through all that, there's still one more match that we got to get to. And as great as so many of those other matches I mentioned on this list were, and as enjoyable as many of them were to go back and watch in full, there's still one match that stands above the rest of them. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Lucha Bros versus the Beta Bucks in the cage match from All Out. No, fuck you, I'm kidding. Number 1, Walter versus Ilya Dragunov from NXT TakeOver 36. Yeah. When I watched this match SummerSlam weekend, as soon as the match was over, like from the moment that final bell rang, I threw my hands up in the air and said, "That's it. That's match of the year right there. Guaranteed nothing's gonna follow it." And by God, Danielson tried so hard with those two fantastic matches with Omega and Page. Ah, man, it hurts, but I still put the Dragunov Walter match over those Danielson matches. And I already talked about how great Walter is, but Ilya Dragunov, dude, how great is that guy? I never followed too much of NXT UK, but the stuff that Dragunov did on just the regular NXT programming and the lead into this match with Walter, that was some of the best television I had seen on that show all year, especially in that upper mid-tier level of programming. You know, and the story of this match followed a very similar format to the story they derived out of the Page Omega story for the, chase for the title. Stemmed from the great match they had the previous year with Dragunov not being able to beat Walter for the belt. And of course, they had basically spent the next 12 months rebuilding and establishing Dragunov as the guy that needs to beat Walter. No one else has been able to do it. United Kingdom Championship reign that lasted, oh God, I had the number in my head at first. Was it 870 days? And he really was booked in position as the man to beat in WWE, main roster or developmental programming. He was undefeated going in. He had barreled through every level of competition put in front of him from the point he won the belt. They had essentially crafted a story where Dragunov would not stop until he was the guy to dethrone Walter. There was no one else that was going to do it. Dragunov needed to be that guy. And if you remember, they had actually done a side story going in where Walter was essentially underestimating Dragunov because, he had already established that he could beat him once. But the genius way they went about booking this is that they basically crafted Dragunov into being this obsessed wild man with one single vision to become the UK champion. So when it finally came down to the match and Walter had already basically ruled him out, and Dragunov managed to beat Walter with that standing chicken wing hold, it genuinely caught Walter off guard, which led to that immediate tap-out finish we saw. And, if you remember, too, they booked the entire match around the idea where Dragunov would refuse to stay down. Walter had pretty much killed Dragunov with everything in the book. And what happens is Dragunov ends up getting on top of Walter and just starts slugging away with him with those nasty European-style punches, slaps to the back of the head and neck, and he's just wearing the guy down and basically had him prone and defenseless on the mat. And that's when he slapped on that submission hold and Walter immediately gave up. And the whole selling afterwards with Dragunov being genuinely shocked that he won. Just a phenomenal, phenomenal visual. And I'd even go on record, man, and say this was probably better than the Tyler Bate match. I think it was, 2019? And that match was fucking great, too. And, of course, having not followed NXT UK, I don't really know how they've been booking either guy now. I remember reading rumors at one point that Walter was being positioned to transition over to regular NXT programming. I don't know what the follow-up with that ever was, though. I remember after the TakeOver show, Dragunov did that post-celebratory promo and pretty much disappeared, and Walter was gone right after the pay-per-view. Like I said, I think the initial idea was to bring Walter over for the regular NXT programming, but, that was well before they had done the whole rebranding thing, so I don't even know if that's entirely possible now. The only other option would be to call him up to the main roster, and that would be generally interesting to see how WWE would manage to fuck that one up. But, yeah. Best match of the year. Hands down, by far. And if the end game is to build to a big rubber match in 2022, yes, please. But I guess we'll see what they do with that. It's just a match with a unique, different style that we're just so unaccustomed to seeing in the modern era. But when guys do these kinds of matches, they are diamonds in the rough. So there you have it. My top wrestling matches for 2021. And I'm sorry if there are things on this list that I missed, but this is a personal preference list, and your style of wrestling that you enjoy probably does not fit what I enjoy. So if there's something that seemed obligatory and I completely left off the list for one reason or another, you can take me to task in the comments below. And again, you can take that Beta Bucks Lucha Bros cage match and you can shove it up your arse sideways. Fuck that match. And fuck everything about modern professional wrestling that people actually would enjoy something like that. That said, I do want to jump on this because I had promised that I was going to do an AEW roster analysis, and I have pulled up the official AEW roster page. And what I'm going to do, like I said, is I'm going to construct a list of basically the yeses and nos of the AEW roster. People I would keep, people I would get rid of. And I kind of went back and forth like with a maybe list, like, you know, maybe send them to developmental or something like that. I mean, I know AEW doesn't have a developmental system, but, you know, even taking them off TV and keeping them on dark shows or wait till they've improved to a level where they're ready for mainstream television. The way I see it at this point, AEW's roster is very bloated. And there are certain guys that you could conceivably keep around, you know, guys that are not necessarily ready but may be ready for future someday. It's a take it or leave it scenario, but my main point with this roster is just to try to come up with a list of double digits, like low double digits. Like I'm talking 15 to 20. Just construct an AEW roster that's sort of set from like a territorial standpoint, because like I said, it's a very in-depth talent pool, but you know, you take a look at some of these guys I'm skimming over right now, and it's just, you take one look at them, and it's like, why are they still with the company? And especially when you've seen the way that that AEW sort of modified and shifted the scope of their roster in the last couple years. Again, trying to do away with more of the outlaw guys and focusing more on some of the bigger names and potential future stars. So that's basically the idea with this list here. So I'm going to go over men's roster, women's roster. I think there's like managers and referees here, and I guess I could throw them in there too. But let's take this from the very top of the list, and I'm trying not to be too lengthy with this. And yeah, just got to make sure I'm still recording there because this is a longer episode. All right. Got Aaron Solo, first one. Aaron Solo. He's going to be a hard no for me, much like pretty much anything involving QT Marshall and his factory is a no-go for me. Adam Cole. Adam Cole for me is a yes. We keep Adam Cole, but we ditch any affiliation he has with the Young Bucks. If we're talking like singles main event Adam Cole from NXT, yes, I will take that version, but this garbage undercard goofball comedy geek Adam Cole, yeah, I'll pass on that one. But I will definitely keep Adam Cole because he's definitely a talent. Adam Page, it kind of goes without saying. You got to keep Adam Page. Alan Angels, no. I'm trying to construct I have a Word document here with a table, and I'm trying to set it so that it doesn't bold everything at the beginning of the lines. I think we'll be good there. Yeah, Alan Angels, job guy, get him out of there. Alex Reynolds, pass on him. Gotta kind of change my recording thing there. Andrade El Idolo. God damn it. I have to think. I put him over in the Match of the Year list. He's a talented guy in some aspects, but honestly, with the way AEW's going about booking, he just seems like a complete afterthought on this show. I still am trying to come up with rational reasons why they even signed him to begin with. So, yeah, he's a hard no for me too. And sorry if you're a fan of Andrade. Angelico. I didn't even know that guy still existed. Put him on the no list. Anthony Bowens. Good look. Part of a goofy comedy tag team. That would be a guy that if I had a maybe list, I would put on take him off television until he's ready, but right now I would put him on a no list. If we're trying to liquidate AEW's roster and narrow it down to the people that they really need, Bowens is not a guy that I would keep as a top priority. Anthony Ogogo. Again, I had no idea he was even still around, but no. The Ogogo experiment kind of failed. Thanks for that one, Cody. Austin Gunn. The Gun Club have been very entertaining. I will keep Austin Gunn, and right next to him, Billy Gunn. I will keep those guys. Those guys could be a very entertaining undercard tag team in faction. Plus, I mean, yes, Austin and Colt are green when it comes to athletic skill, but you got Billy Gunn there as the mouthpiece for their group. They have been pretty entertaining on television, so sure, we'll keep the Gun Club. Bobby Fish. Always love Bobby Fish. Love his work with Colin O'Reilly, so definitely got to keep him. Brandon Cutler, fuck you, get off my TV, never return. Brian Cage, again, I don't really see why they keep him around. I have not seen the dude on television in a long time. I don't even know if they even plan on keeping him around long term. Brian Pillman Jr. Yes, sir. I will keep Brian Pillman Jr. That is a very talented youngling there. Brock Anderson. Oh, God. Maybe in 4 or 5 years, bring him back when he's ready for TV. But again, just kind of a collective waste of space on the roster right now. Sorry, Arn. Bryan Danielson. No, of course we got to fire Bryan Danielson. What kind of value does he add to the business at this point? Yeah, of course I'm going to keep Bryan Danielson. Cash Wheeler. I'm going to keep Cash. Best tag team in AEW right now in that FTR. Chavo Guerrero Jr. He hasn't even been on television in a long time now, and he hasn't really done anything for me since he showed up. So, no. Chris Jericho. No. Overexposed. I don't need to see him on my TV anymore. Take a backstage role if you want, but other than that, go away. Christian Cage. Yeah, I'll keep him. He's not been booked particularly well, but he's a guy that can still go, and I would definitely, if I'm trying to build up some young guys, I would definitely keep him around. Christopher Daniels. He has not been on TV in a long time, too. I think he's doing work with Impact Wrestling last I checked. But, I would keep Daniels. Like I said, he's a veteran in the business. He's a good worker. He knows what he's doing, so I'd keep him. Chuck Taylor. Go hit the gym and come back to me in 10 years when you have a six-pack. CM Punk, absolutely. Keep CM Punk on my list there. I'm slowly starting to realize that this might not be a 15 to 20 list, but more so would be like maybe a 20 to 30. We'll see, though. Oh, no. Cody Rhodes, our new TNT champion. Oh, man. Do I keep him around to troll the AEW crowd? Here's the thing. I am operating under the impression that if I were given the book, that I would be booking Cody Rhodes in AEW. The current incarnation of Cody Rhodes sucks donkey balls, but I would keep Cody and I would book him in a way that makes him more tolerable on camera. Preferably book him as a heel. Colt Cabana. Nah, I'll pass on him. Yeah, the job order stuff doesn't really do him any favors. I mean, Colt's always been a decent wrestler, but I actually kind of liked him better in the NWA. Him in AEW just never felt like a fit to me. And, they don't do anything of substance with him anyway. Colton Gunn. Yep, got to keep Colton. He's a member of the Gun Club. Daniel Garcia. So here's a guy that I have been relatively high on. I know he's green. I know he's young. He hasn't been in the business that long, but the stuff that I have seen of Garcia on AEW TV has been very good, especially the stuff with 2.0. So, yes, I will keep Daniel Garcia because I could see him as a pretty hot commodity to this company in a few years. Oh, no. Dante Martin. A walking drywall personality. Oh, boy. If they had kept him on Team Taz and booked him as a heel, yeah, I could keep Dante around. The babyface version of him, though, that they're running with right now is just not good. And, after watching him do that match with MJF on Dynamite for that diamond ring, that match really exposed Dante. I'm sorry. And I've even said it again, like, aside from all the kicks and flips and stuff the dude does, he's just a blank slate as a personality. Yeah, he's another guy that just say come back in maybe 5 years when you have a little more experience and a little more exposure and in the business, and maybe. But right now, if I'm trying to narrow an efficient AEW roster down, he's not a nuts and bolts guy that I would keep around. Darby Allin, he is not my flavor, but you know what? He's different. The people like him, and I've seen some good stuff from Darby, so I will keep Darby around. Darius Martin. Haven't seen that guy in a long time. I know he's been out with injury, but he's the same boat as Dante. Just take him off until he's ready to come back, until he's more experienced in the business. Dax Harwood, obviously, got to keep my main man Dax. Dustin Rhodes, yes sir, I will keep Dustin. Absolutely a veteran in the business and knows how to work. Got to keep him around. And here's the thing too. I was joking about Cody earlier, and it's like if I had the book and they gave me in charge of overseeing things, how would I go about structuring AEW programming? I would be pairing Cody and Dustin as a tag team. Have them go after the world titles. The world tag titles, I should say. I mean, they've done the tag team pairing before. I think it would lesser the booze for Cody if he was in some kind of mid-card role in a tag team. I know the affiliation with Dustin hasn't really helped him out much on television, but, not trying to force-feed Cody down people's throats as a top guy. I mean, the tag team division is always sort of a go-to for that kind of thing, so I don't see why I wouldn't keep Dustin around for that and Cody around for that too. Eddie Kingston, absolutely. Like I said, it took me a long time to come around to that guy, but he is he has a unique style, for sure. Ethan Page, God. He can cut a hell of a promo, but I'll be honest, I have never seen anything out of Ethan Page on AEW TV that really makes it seem like he's a fit. I don't know. He just kind of seems like a guy that's collecting a paycheck on the roster right now. The stuff with Scorpio Sky hasn't really done a whole lot for me. The American Top Team stuff. Maybe Ethan Page would stand out better as a singles guy instead of being crammed into another schmozzy faction. But yeah, the stuff I've seen with them do with him in the last several months, it just hasn't spotlighted him well. And I even remember talking about this too. I hated that stuff he did with Darby earlier in the summer. Like that whole coffin match thing. I mean, it was a great showcase piece to get Ethan Page on TV and sort of, showcase him as a singles guy, but I just wasn't fond of that program at all. So, again, we're trying to narrow this roster down to the most effective amount of talents. I would probably take a pass on Ethan. Evil Uno, God almighty, that fucking graphic of him just looks like shit. No. Frankie Kazarian, there's another guy that I don't see on AEW programming too much, but yeah, Frankie's good. I keep Frankie around. Especially if I have him pair up with Daniels and do some tag team stuff. I still don't really know why they broke up SoCal either. That was another question I wondered about. It's like they went through the whole process of breaking up SoCal Uncensored so they could spotlight Scorpio as a singles guy, and then they just paired him in a tag team with Ethan Page, and then Kaz and Daniels, I think, went over to Impact. What the fuck? Fuego del Sol. Whoo! That record. What the fuck? Oh my god. No, get out of here with that shit. Fuego del Sol. Yeah, the luchador from fucking Mobile, Alabama. Genius. They got Griff Garrison. Absolutely. I will keep Griff around. I know he's still pretty young, new to the business, but I really dig that pairing with him and Brian Pillman Jr. They are another solid mid-card tag team duo that would definitely... They definitely have a future for the business, so I'd keep them. Hook. Got to update your record there, AEW. Man is 2-0 now. He just beat Bear Bronson on Rampage. Like I said, I'm not totally sold on Hook yet. But there's something there. There is definitely something there. I will keep Hook around. I wouldn't put the rocket ship on him so far soon, but I think he's definitely an added commodity to the roster. Definitely a younger guy that I would definitely keep my eyes set on in another 5 to 6 years. Isaiah Cassidy. Oh, God. I know he just wrestled this week, but... No, I'm good. Private Party. That was the tag team I couldn't remember earlier. I was like, why do I keep confusing Top Flight and Private Party? Well, there you go. Completely forgot the name of that tag team. Remember when the Bucks put them over on TV? Yeah. God, my table's rattling. Jack Evans. No, I will pass on Jack Evans. I'm good. Jake Hager. Kind of forgot that guy existed. No. I've never been a fan of Jack Swagger, Jake Hager, whatever you want to call him. I mean, the stuff he was doing in the inner circle early on was pretty good, but I don't really see much of a use for him at this point. Just kind of seems like a peripheral background player now. Jay Lethal, he's been booked like shit, but I love me some Jay Lethal. And if I were handed the book, I would make sure I'd be pushing that guy in the main event title picture sometime soon. Possibly even putting the belt on him. Jeff Parker 2.0. Yes, sir. I was never sold on 2.0, Everrise, whatever they were called in NXT, but they have been a world of fresh air in AEW. Again, they're like a comedy undercard faction with Daniel Garcia, but the stuff I see them do in the ring, it doesn't seem like they're going out of their way to expose the business, if that makes sense. They're relatively solid workers. I love their comedy promos, but they're wacky cartoon characters that don't expose the business. I guess that's the way I would put it. Joey Janella. No. Honestly, he's a guy that I could see getting released relatively soon once his contract is up. John Silver, interesting look, but Dark Order stuff. I don't want to see it. This one's going to hurt people. Jon Moxley. I know he's in rehab right now, and I know this is probably touchy for a lot of people. I wish him the best of luck with his health. I'm glad that he's taking the initiative to get help and to fix his problems. I thoroughly enjoyed his podcast with Chris Jericho. I actually went back and listened to it about a month ago. And I was just as entertaining a second time listening to him rant about WWE booking. He just hasn't hit home with me in AEW. I have not seen anything with Moxley, be it the AEW World Title run, anything post or pre Jon Moxley that I say I would enjoy. There's just something that hasn't clicked with him yet. And the way I look at it, it's like if you're going to have Eddie Kingston around, why do you need Jon Moxley? I mean, they wrestle the same style. They're kind of like those more hardcore Mick Foley, Terry Funk-esque kind of characters. It's like you already got that spot filled, so why do you need another one? Just saying. Jungle Boy. I like the Jurassic Express. Jungle Boy still has some things he needs to work on, but he's definitely a future breakout star for them. Oh no, Kenny Omega. Oh God almighty. He's not my flavor. Like I said, he's had 2 match of the year candidates on my list, but yeah, he's just not my style. And again, I'm trying to conserve the roster to the people that I feel are most of a benefit to the company in my book. I just don't see Kenny Omega as that guy, and I never have. I know all the Dave Meltzer cucks out there will tear me a new one for that, but you can stick it. Kip Sabian, haven't seen him in God knows how long. I'm sure he's another guy who's sort of just waiting out his contract before he gets released. Kyle O'Reilly, duh, just fucking showed up. Why would I cut him now? Especially if I'm putting him in a tag team with Bobby Fischer, slotting him with Adam Cole and Bobby Fish together. Lance Archer. I saw Lance Archer in the G1 a couple years ago. I remember he had a great match with Will Ospreay. He has not done it for me in AEW. I'm sorry. Just another big guy that they just haven't booked well. And I know he had that horrible match with Eddie Kingston earlier this year where he spiked himself on his head with that moonsault. I mean, he hasn't been on TV since, so I'm wondering if there's something deeper in there that's not being talked about right now, but yeah. Good look, but the Murder Hawk Monster gimmick for me just isn't doing it. It's just, sorry, not my flavor. Oh man, 3 guys in a row here that I probably could honestly do without. I'm just going to chalk them all up on the get rid of list. Lee Johnson, Lee Moriarty, and Leo Rush. don't see a use for him. Unless you're gonna keep him around for job matches and things like that on TV, I wouldn't keep those guys around for big pushes or anything. Yeah, sorry. I like Leo to an extent. The Dante stuff was horribly botched, but I thoroughly enjoyed his cruiserweight title run in NXT, but he also kind of stood out in NXT. In AEW, he's really blended in and not done anything of great substance. And I haven't seen him on TV since the Dante split, so I don't know what's going on with him. Lucha Soros, absolutely. I love me Lucha Soros. He's a fucking giant dude with a dinosaur mask on that does flips and kicks. How could you not love him? Luther of the Chaos Project. Oh, yeah, that's that death match Japanese guy. No, I'm good. Mark Henry. Man, I love Mark Henry a lot, but he's kind of just a guy collecting space, so I'll throw him on the no list. And the thing is, too, is like, if we're trying to comprise a list of, wrestlers and agents and things like that, it's like, what has Mark Henry done in AEW that you would classify as good or standout? He's never wrestled, and I don't think he plans to. He hasn't particularly been a good backstage interviewer or announcer. They tried both of those, and they flopped horribly. He has that little added charm when he does those pre-main event things on Rampage where he's talking with the guys before the matches, but I don't know. I think there are better guys out there for that spot. Mr. Fun Size Marco Stunt. Either grow 6 inches or get off my TV and never return. Mark Quinn and his goofy haircut. Nope. I'm good. Don't need it. Matt Hardy. Leave. Go. Get off my TV, never return. Matt Jackson, and whatever that stupid pose is you're doing on the screen there, goodbye. Matt Lee, the other 2.0 member. I keep Matt Lee. He's Matt Jackson, but he can actually work, and he's tolerable on camera when he does goofiness. God, Jericho's right. He does have a square head. I never noticed that until now. He's also got boobs. It's probably not good. Matt Sydal. I like Matt, but I don't really see a purpose to keep him around unless, again, he's going to be around as a job guy. Just doesn't really do anything for me. Max Caster, no, not really. Kind of good. Michael, knock it the fuck off. No. Did I spell his name right? Who cares? Goodbye. Miro. Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Gotta keep Miro. We are not getting rid of the Redeemer yet. MJF. Oh, yeah. Gotta keep MJF, even though I'm still horribly concerned about his health following that botched dive on Dynamite. Mr. Brody Lee Jr. Oh my god. Why the fuck? Really, guys? Alright. Look. I know Brody Lee has a special heart in everyone's everyone's hearts. It's been a year, guys. Like, you can't even do like an alumni section for him. Why is he on the active roster? He's dead. Sorry to put it bluntly, but yeah, he's not alive. It's okay. You can remove him from the roster page. You can say that he's with us in spirit. But I don't really know why you fucking need the graphic of him. Especially his son. Why the fuck is Brody Lee's son on here? Oh my god. I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. Malachi Black. Oh god. See, the problem is with Malachi is, like, if I keep him around, I have to also account for all the horrible booking that they've done with him since he showed up. I will keep Malachi, but I have to do major damage control with him if I'm keeping him around. Because, good lord, they screwed the pooch with him since he's come in. Nick Camarado in that fucking weird tan. Oh, lord. Camarado's got a good look, but I listened to someone that said they should have paired him with Lucha Soros and Jungle Boy, because he does kind of look like a caveman if you think about it. But nah, I don't really see the purpose. And like I said, I'm not a big fan of the whole QT Marshall faction. Just hasn't done a lot for me. Nick Jackson, who I think is trying to squeeze out a fart in this one. We'll get rid of him. Although he is the more tolerable of the two Bucks, if I'm being frank. Orange Cassidy, Jesus Christ. No. Overstayed your welcome, bud. Ortiz, I honestly have no use for him. I have not seen him work a match since whatever the Full Gear pay-per-view was. Hasn't really done a whole lot for me there. Pac, fuck yes. Keeping Pac, absolutely. Paul White, nah, I'm good. Penta El Cerro Miedo. I'm just gonna write Penta because I don't feel like writing all that out. No, he can go back to Mexico and learn how to work an American-style tag match and then come back. Powerhouse Hobbs. Fuck yeah. Gotta keep Powerhouse Hobbs, even though he's also been booked like trash. But he's a talent. Give him that. Preston Vance. Dark Order. Say no more. Bye, Felicia. Did I spell that right? Preston Vance. That's cute, guys. That's real cute. He's trash. Peter Avalon. I did not know he existed still. God, you guys remember the fucking librarian stuff they used to do on TV? That's some quality 2019 level AEW programming there. QT Marshall. No thank you. Didn't like his work in Ring of Honor. Don't really care about him now. Rey Fenix. He is the more tolerable of the Lucha Bros, but I'm good. I do not need to see any more Rey Fenix matches ever in my life. Ricky Starks, however, I need to see more Ricky Starks in my life, so I will keep him. Sammy Guevara, he's got something. He needs a lot of work in some areas. He's still rough around the edges, but yeah, I will keep Sammy Guevara. Santana, I actually like Santana. But again, it's just, they don't do anything with him now. Like, again, I'm trying to save up space on my roster here, unless I'm going to put the tag belts on them, which I don't think I need to. Just don't really have a use for him. Scorpio Sky. I like Scorpio, but again, he just doesn't seem like much of an added bonus to the roster at this point. Serpentico, I have no idea who the fuck that is. Get him out of there. Sean Dean, I think he's a job guy. I'm good. Sean Spears coming right after him. No, I was never a Ty Dillinger, Sean Spears guy from whether NXT, WWE, or AEW. Actually, the best rendition of Sean Spears is the stuff he's doing now where he's just being a goofball with Wardlow. Because at least he's sort of a semi-comical heel, but... No, I'm good. I don't need any more of the chairman in my life. The Concrete Rose, Sunny Kiss. Nope. Oh, I gotta make sure I nail this one. It's Sting! Yeah, man. Fucking 62-year-old Sting. Gotta put over that young generation, dude. Of course, I gotta keep him around. Stu Grayson. Good on him. The Blade. You know what? Actually, it's funny. The Blade and the Butcher are right next to each other here on the roster page. I have never liked Pepper Parks. Whatever he wrestled as in TNA years ago. I don't even fucking remember at this point. It's been so long. But I like the Butcher. He's got a cool look. Definitely like Mid-South territorial look. Again, it's sort of like operating from the same mentality as Black. If I do keep the Butcher and the Blade around as a team, I like completely discount all the booking they've ever done with them. But I will keep the Butcher and the Blade because they actually are a pretty solid duo. I'd get rid of the Bunny because she has nothing of value, but yeah, those two are a pretty good team. Oh geez, really? AEW? You gotta put Trent and Tony Nese right next to each other. Spent all that time talking about how he looks like a bastardized version of Jay White and Trent Beretta if they had a kid. And of course, Tony and Trent are right next to each other. Nah, Tony doesn't do it for me. Never has and probably never will. Trent Beretta, goofy comedy thing with the best friends. I'm good. I like Trent, but I don't need to see him on my TV after all of his association with Orange Cassidy and Chucklefuck. And Mr. Mayhem Wardlow. Yes, sir. I will keep Wardlow. Especially when you factor in the stuff they're doing with him and MJF right now. Full show. So there we go. That's the men's roster. Do I want to count all these now or just wait till the end? Well, let's count the men first. So these are the men that I would keep right now on my AEW roster. Got Adam Cole, Adam Page, Austin Gunn, Billy Gunn, Bobby Fish, Brian Pillman Jr., Bryan Danielson, Cash Wheeler, Christian Cage, Christopher Daniels, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, Colton Gunn, Daniel Garcia, Darby Allin, Dax Harwood, Dustin Rhodes, Eddie Kingston, Frankie Kazarian, Griff Garrison, Hook, Jay Lethal, Jeff Parker, Jungle Boy, Kyle O'Reilly, Lucha Soros, Matt Lee, Miro, MJF, Malachi Black, Pac, Powerhouse Hobbs, Ricky Stark, Sammy Guevara, Sting, Butcher, Blade, Wardlow. That is 38 guys. If I really took some time to narrow it down even more, I could probably what's the word? Will out a few? Weasel out a few? Weed out a few. Good Lord. I could probably weed out a couple more guys. But I will settle for 38 men. Obviously, you would have to use these guys interchangeably over time, but I think a roster of 38 male talents is a more conventional roster than 150 plus men to work with. At least this way you could come up with some fresh programs of actual talented guys and just cut all that dead weight you have. So that's the men's roster. Let's move on to the women's roster here. Do I want to make a new table for this? Let's go ahead and make a new table. And of course I have to go up here and reformat everything again. Alright. Let's move on to the women's roster on AEW, where we could probably cut the entire fucking roster because they're all trash. Alright. Speaking of trash, Abaddon. Sure looks like it. No. No. Good on Abaddon. Bunny. No. I'm good on Bunny. Making nice headway here with this women's roster. Anna Jay. People say they see something in Anna Jay. I have not seen it. Maybe come back in a few years when she has a little more experience and I'll do a little reevaluation of her. But right now, I could leave Anna Jay, honestly. Brandy Rhodes, you know what? Actually, I am going to, well, no, because if I was booking Cody, I wouldn't be, oh, God, that's a tough one. I would keep Brandy Rhodes around as a mouthpiece heater for Cody, but, see, if I were booking though, I don't think I would want Brandy around at all. She just detracts so much from when she's on camera. Yeah, I'm good. Britt Baker. I will keep Britt. I do like Britt Baker. Emi Sakura. No, I'm good on her. Hikaru Shida. She's a solid talent, but again, there's better female talent out there, so I'll pass on her. Jade Cargill, no. I know they're building her up right now, and she's probably going to win the TBS women's title, but no, I'm good. I haven't seen anything good out of her since she's shown up. Jamie Hayter, no, she doesn't do anything for me. Chris Statlander, I like Chris Statlander to an extent, but she's still so goddamn green. And I'm trying to assess a talent pool based on women that are ready for TV in prime time. Unless they had some kind of like tag division or something to pair her up with someone, I'm good. You know, again, give her a few more years of experience. I know she's relatively young right now, so it'll take time, but so far, I'm good on her. Leva Bates, I have seen a couple good Leva Bates matches before, but it was well before she showed up in AEW. But the Librarian stuff, God, does that turn the channel heat. Layla Hirsch, not right now. Again, just give it several more years. When she's a little more experienced, I could give her another go, see if she's ready. Nyla Rose, I'll put her on the no. Penelope Ford, I will put her on the hell no. I'll put Penelope Ford on, if you book her on the independent circuit, brace yourself. Rebel, she's actually kind of been semi-entertaining with Britt, but I'm good on her. Red Velvet, she is a very beautiful woman. She is a horrible fucking wrestler, so I'll take a no on her. Riho, everyone's favorite. No, I'm good. Can't take her seriously. Yes, thank you for that. I'm sure you could all heard that in the background. Ruby Soho. I will keep Ruby. I'm not the biggest fan of her in the world, but she does add value to the women's roster. And I think she can get a couple pairings out of some decent talent here. Serena Deeb. Fuck yes, I will keep Serena Deeb. Ty Conti. Oh, God. Again, so many people say they see something in her, but I've watched so many Ty Conti matches, and I never thought she was any good. NXT or AEW. Now, Thunder Rosa, on the other hand, yes, she is someone I would keep. And I caught her out of the corner of my eye there, but Yuka, Saka, Faka, Waka Laka, whatever the fuck her name is, yeah, I'm good on her. So there is your AEW women's roster. Britt Baker, Ruby Soho, Serena Deeb, and Thunder Rosa. God damn, is that a shitty-ass women's roster? I guess I should preface that, too, with saying, if I were in charge, I would be bringing in some quality female talent to replace a lot of the girls that I kicked off the list here. Some of them would probably be crossovers from WWE if I had the opportunity to sign them, but yeah. Ah, man. That sucks. That sucks so bad. And, like, the thing is, too, is, like, Britt's very good as a personality. Her ring work is still kind of iffy, but I could at least buy her in a main event level match against a Deeb or a Rosa. So, and you got 2 heels and 2 baby faces to work with there. You mesh those 4 up together and you just put them on TV every week in various matches, and we could probably work with that. But yeah, that's my ideal AEW women's roster. And again, you bring in a few girls here and there from other companies, but yeah, this current rendition of AEW's women's roster is wretched. Then we have the broadcast team. I will make another table for that. And you know what I'll do is I'll just do that for the remainder, since everyone else is like either referee or something like that. Where's my table? There it is. Okay. Space that out a little bit. Okay, let's go. Broadcast team. Alex Abrahantes. Your guess is as good as mine as to who in the fuck that is. I think he's paired with the Lucha Bros, isn't he? See, that's a problem. It's like, so many of these managers and mouthpieces are so horribly used on TV. Like, Alex Abrahantes, I didn't even know that guy existed. And I actually even kind of pay attention to this show. Alex Marvez, oh my god, is that guy horrid. No, I will pass on Alex Marvez. Whether he was doing ring announcing, backstage interviews, commentary, it didn't matter. That guy was always garbage. Tasha, I like her as a ring announcer, so I keep her around as a ring announcer. Excalibur, I don't like Excalibur's commentary. He's just not for me, so I'll pass on him. Jim Ross, yeah, I'll keep Jim. That's my ideal play-by-play guy. Justin Roberts, never liked his ring announcing, so I'll pass on him. Taz, got to get a color guy in there, so sure. And I will take Tony Schiavone as a ideal ring announcer / interviewer. Referees. Aubrey Edwards. I will keep Aubrey around. However, I would monitor what matches I would have her officiate. If she's officiating world title matches and things like that, I'd probably have to pump the brakes a little bit there, but definitely having her as the referee for the women's matches and some of the more undercard matches, yeah, I would put her in those spots. Bryce Remsburg is fucking awful. And he also needs to take some testosterone pills. Mike Posey, the very few times we actually see him on TV, but no, I'm good with him. Paul Turner I actually like, because he's actually a semi-competent official. So I will keep Paul Turner. And Rick Knox can go piss up a rope. That guy's fucking awful. And the coaches, we have Billy Gunn. Definitely got to keep him around. Didn't I even put him in the... Yeah, I put him up as a wrestler too, but we'll keep him in the coaches / trainers. Jerry Lynn, he's definitely someone that can add value. Vicky Guerrero, I will not go with her. Just, again, it's more that go away, turn the channel heat. Arn Anderson, yes, I will keep Arn. I would keep doing what they're doing with him and Cody. If I was booking Cody and Dustin in a tag team, I would definitely keep Arn around as the manager for that group. And totally I would do the same with FTR. I guess I should mention too, my thought process with this is actually giving the managers opportunities to actually speak and be managers. So when they're doing backstage pre-tapes and stuff like that, I would actually have totally do talking for a change instead of just standing there and not adding anything of substance or value to it. But yep, there's your list. So what do we have? I already mentioned 38 male talents, 4 female talents that I would keep. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 10, what do you call them? Like ring personnel / broadcast / referee / managers, coaches, whatever you want to call it. Whatever subcategory you want to throw these guys in. But, I'm trying to break it down in a way that makes sense. So Dasha, ring announcer. Jim Ross is the play-by-play guy. Taz is the color commentator. Tony Schiavone is the ring interviewer, backstage interviewer. Aubrey and Paul is my 2 referees. Billy Gunn, Jerry Lynn, Arn Anderson, and Tully as my mouthpieces / coaches / trainers / fill in the blank. So, again, it's a mentality to cut dead weight. Because, again, there's so many people on this AEW roster. It's just so hard to conceive of why they need them all. So, going forward into 2022, if I were in charge of overseeing things and I had they gave me like a script of pick your guys to keep and guys to cut, this would be my list. And this also implies that I would be going about trying to book and structure these guys so that they're featured effectively on television. But I mean, with the amount of programming AEW has, 2 hours of Dynamite, an hour of Rampage, some of these dark shows, this would be a way to efficiently feature these guys too. Because again, you keep in mind, a lot of the problem too is so many of the talents AEW has is you get that constant stop and start booking where someone gets featured for a little bit of time, but because they have so many people, some people end up disappearing from television for a long time. Everyone gets thrown into clustered factions that don't stand out. It's just a whole laundry list of problems. So, at least in my vision of cutting down the roster a little bit, this is a more efficient way to spotlight some of your best talent. And again, it's not to say that the guys that I put on the no list aren't people that you could occasionally bring in to do jobs or squashes, especially some of like the younger talent that maybe give them a few years once they get a little more experienced. You could bring them back in some kind of capacity and start to market and feature them. But yeah, there's my little list of yeses and nos with AEW. Oh, God, this is a long show. That took so long. Actually, it took a lot longer than I thought it would. We are at the 2-hour mark. That is insane. Well, I guess that'll close out the video. I didn't really have a interesting way to segue out of the podcast this week, but for sure, if you guys even get to this part, feel free to share your feedback and commentary on the Match of the Year list I provided and this list of AEW talents to keep and get rid of. Let me know if there's some guys that you would throw in onto the no list too, maybe some people you'd put on the yes list. Just, any way you could provide feedback would be greatly appreciated. Until Friday, that'll do it for this show. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Take care. Peace out.